Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 202, Connecting the Dots. Huo Lingyuan had seen wolves before. In the wilderness of Deng province, those wolves that were all skin and bones had their tails between their legs as they ran on King Yi's hunting grounds, their eyes glowing with ravenous hunger. But at this moment, the wolf he was seeing was one that was hailed from Libei. Not only did this wolf possess a strong physique, but it also had an aura so oppressively intimidating that he gripped his chains tight. Even the muscles on his back had tensed up with tension. Huo Lingyuan must not gasp for air, because if he opened his mouth again, Xiao Qiye would throttle him and snap his throat. Xiao Qiye completely dominated the atmosphere around him as he remained kneeling in place. It conjured the illusion of being pinned down by the back of his head. Xiao Qiye wanted Huo Lingyuan on his knees, with his head down. Huo Lingyuan broke out in cold sweat as he simmered in that unending silence. He did not want to compromise, but by the time he returned to his senses, he had already averted his gaze and bowed his head. Since that bout of heavy snowfall, the Libei armored cavalry had never won again. The battles they were fighting on the battlegrounds at present all proved to be aggravating. Gone were the days when the armored cavalry reigned over the battlefield. Huo Lingyuan initially planned to crush Xiao Qiye's spirit and level the playing field for both parties during the negotiations. Yet he had run right smack into an iron plate and was now being held down to the ground by Xiao Qiye instead. Xiao Qiye's shadow did not shift. His lowered gaze locked onto the back of Huo Lingyuan's head as he repeated with cold detachment, "Can it?" Huo Lingyuan clenched his teeth as he deflated and swallowed down his indignation. To think he had gotten afraid. Xiao Qiye was completely poles apart from Shen Zequan. He would not feign civility at certain moments. Instead, he would dominate and dictate. He would hold down the heads of all of those who provoked him and offer them only one way out. The imperial army in its earlier days knew this very well from experience. Shen Zequan covered the teacup with the lid and tapped his fingers against it intermittently. He possessed the ability to warm up the atmosphere after a cold spell, and through this subtle action, he curiously unraveled the tension in the hall, allowing Fei Sheng, who was still kneeling, to resume breathing. Outside the door, Gu Jin exhaled lightly and released his grip on the hilt of his blade. It was not until Huo Lingyuan's entire back was drenched in sweat that the shadow enveloping him pulled back. Xiao Qiye did not withdraw his gaze. He merely leaned back into his comfort zone, as though he had lost interest in the Huo Lingyuan who had his head down. It was at this moment that Shen Zequan opened up the lid and said in between sips of tea, "You're very well acquainted with the situation in Duan province." These two men took over from one another seamlessly, yet they both exuded a dangerous aura. Huo Lingyuan's palms were all sweaty. He retracted his contempt as he became all the more certain that he had been right in his decision to come. The scorpions came looking for King Yi before Huo Lingyuan decided to show his sincerity. During the 12th month last year, they instigated King Yi to ambush Cha province and cut off your contact with Qidong. To that end, he gifted King Yi with a shipment of blunderbuss. In a flash, both Shen Zequan and Xiao Qiye thought of the white scorpions. These Bianchi spies concealed themselves deep in Great Zhou, collaborating with Amuer from inside and outside to pierce through the heart of Great Zhou. The 12th month of the previous year was the turning point when the Libei armored cavalry switched from offensive to defensive. Had King Yi been brave enough to launch a surprise attack on Cha province at the Scorpions' instigation, Shen Zequan would undoubtedly be held in check by this diversion and reduced his aid to Libei. Additionally, they only had to cut off the route to Cha province, and Qi Ziyan would have to make a detour from the eastern side of Tianfei Watchtower to head up north, where she was bound to pass through the territory of Fan province. With the scorpions lying in ambush en route, the commander-in-chief's life would be in peril. They're keeping a close watch on Commander-in-Chief Qi. Shen Zequan looked at Xiao Qiye, the expression in his eyes conveying all the words he left unspoken. Hassan's encirclement of Xiao Fangxiu to kill him was not only to deal a blow to Libei, but also to capitalize on the opportunity to lure out Qi Ziyan. As expected, Amuer knew Great Zhou like the back of his hand. But King Yi didn't make his move. He would rather stay in Fan province like a cowering coward, and then he had his head blown off by you with the blunderbuss. Xiao Qiye's words were scathing. So, did the scorpions come looking for you, too? Huo Lingyuan stared at both his knees. No. You're lying. Shen Zequan schemed the tea foam and raised his eyes to say with certainty through that willowy spiral of steam, you've had contact with the scorpions before. When Shen Zequan was in the Jinyi Wei, he successively served as the southern and northern judge, and the amount of time he had spent in the imperial prison was not exactly short. He naturally had his own means of interrogating people, just like how he had once tricked Ji Lei and Shi Hongxian through his conversations with them. He was adept at using circumstances to manipulate the atmosphere. Sometimes, one had to keep their words short without revealing more than necessary, and the other party would naturally let his thoughts run wild. Huo Lingyuan had to remain clear-headed. If he so much as gave a wrong answer again as he kneeled here, he might end up literally losing his head. He held up against the pressure from both men and exhaled deeply, as if exhorting himself to remain calm. He was already at a dead end, and the worst that could happen was happening now. Thus, when he lifted his head once again, he regained some of his composure. That's right, Huo Lingyuan said. I've had contact with the scorpions long before King Yi. My father fought a winning battle during the 6th year of the Xian era, and he dispatched someone over to persuade my father to give up Fan province. He also promised my father a noble title, but my father turned him down. Shen Zequan inclined his head slightly, concealing the lingering redness at the corners of his eyes under the slanting, backlit shadows. You said he died. Not they. Huo Lingyuan recalled the night a few years ago, when the horse carriage from Chu capital brought along a valuable letter of significance. Huo Qing stood by the candlelight and opened it, where he touched the heavy promise within. If the Bianjun commandery was the most wretched garrison troops in Qidong, then Deng province was the poorest prefecture of Zhongbo. These two places were similarly poor. Deng province's one and only advantage was that it did not have to face the onslaught of attacks from the Biancha cavalry all the time like the Bianjun commandery had to. After the Zhongbo's troops' defeat, the rampant banditry put Huo Qing in a terrible fix, and he remained stranded in this corner, unable to get any assistance from the imperial court. That letter was the last chance Huo Qing had to get out of his predicament, but he did not take it and ended up as dinner in the dogs' bellies. Yes, he died. Huo Lingyuan enunciated the word through clenched teeth. This man is hiding right within Chu capital, and he's by no means an ordinary person if he can make such a promise. After my father refused the bribe, he was impeached by that Peng dog. Consequently, the Ministry of War refused to promote my father. They believed that cursed Peng's one-sided lies and stopped giving Deng province the military funds it was due. That was when the bandits resurfaced in Deng province. Yang Qiu went to Fan province and joined hands with Kui Qing to set up a brothel trade and got back into the business of selling women. He also took the opportunity to make contact with Lei Changming of Mount Luo. The dots were all connecting now. Shen Zequan remembered his puzzlement when he was checking the Yan clan's accounts in Dun province. How did Biancha not leave any traces behind when they stole away such a large batch of resources from Great Zhou? The reason was that they were not using the route through Dun province or Mount Luo or Duan province at all. From start to end, Lei Changming and Lei Jin's had merely been a smokescreen amuer set up in the northeast of Zhongbo. No wonder Yan Hiru was so sure about this. He had indeed never been involved in trading of these goods before. However, he must have known about it because the merchants within his groups all had dealings with Kui Qing. In addition with what Yu Xiaozhe had said about Peng Fangmiao's impeachment of Huo Qing during the 6th year of the Xian era, Shen Zequan was even more certain of his conjectures. The goods were transported from Fan province. Shen Zequan held the teacup in his hands. They sent the goods directly to the banks of Hashi River without even passing through Dun province. He initially wanted to use a noble title to bribe Huoqing into being a white scorpion and turn the Deng province's garrison troops in Huoqing's hands into delivery escorts for the goods. After Huoqing turned him down, he sought out the prefectural prefect of Deng province, Peng Fangmiao, who accepted the bribe and subsequently started to impeach Huoqing vehemently. Yujing, Shen Zequan suddenly asked Yu Xiaozhe. Which year was Peng Fangmiao transferred down to Deng province? Before that, whose disciple was he? Yu Xiaozhe racked his brain, but all he had to say was, I can't remember. Zongbo was negligent in its administration after the fourth year of the Xian era, and the prefectural prefects in Duan province, Dun province, Fan province, and Deng province changed frequently. All I can remember is the impeachment memorial. The officialdom was as vast as the sea, with innumerable key positions of varying importance just in Chu capital alone. The trivial posts in the local governments were even more complex. Even without Chu capital in the mix, it was impossible for Yu Xiaozhe to remember all the various vice magistrates under the 13 cities of Chuexi, not to mention minute details such as the year the other party was transferred or the person they had received advice from. It had to be known that in Chu capital, when someone sent in a visitation card to call on a powerful household in Chu capital, all it took was for the head of the clan to be willing to see said person and exchange a few words, and said person could proclaim themselves as the other person's disciple the moment they stepped out of the door. They were also sure to address the other as teacher whenever they met. On top of that, the Hua clan and Pan faction had countless of lackeys after the reign of Xiand, when both factions plunged the imperial court into turmoil. Ding Tao. After a moment of silence, Xiao Qiye called out. Come inside. Ding Tao anxiously stuck his head out. Frightened by Xiao Qiye's expression, he walked in with the same side of his arm and leg moving in tandem. Everyone in the hall looked towards Ding Tao. He opened his eyes wide, wanting to look at Shen Zequan, but not daring to. Xiao Qiye was in no hurry. He shifted his arm slightly, then asked Ding Tao, do you still remember the name Peng Fangmiao? Ding Tao shook his head blankly. Outside, Qiao Tianya had a sudden inspiration and piped up, Tao Sui, this person should be in the Ministry of Personnel's reference list after the fourth year of the Xian era. Think again. Hua Saiqian, Wei Gu, or even Pan Rugui. During the fourth year of the Xian era, when the Bianchi cavalry slaughtered the city, the people left in Deng province were Tan Taihu and the others, all of whom were taken into the imperial army by Xiao Qiye. The original prefectural prefect of Deng province had also died during that massacre, so Peng Fangmiao could only be a court official assigned over after the fourth year of the Xian era. Other than his exemplary ability in writing, Ding Tao's memory was also rather astounding. His family's notebook was modeled after the record-taking of the Jinyi Wei, and Ding Tao had grown familiar with the procedure during the times he tagged along with his father. Back in Chu capital, Qiao Tianya had once visited the residence of the Prince of Libei at night but was turned away by Ding Tao and Gu Jin. Ding Tao could tell the origin of the concealed weapon he had tossed out at just a glance, a feat that Qiao Tianya still remembered to this day. Ding Tao fished out his little notebook, staying silent amidst the rustling of pages being flipped. At this sight, Yu Xiaozhe also began to remember. Without realizing it, he spoke out, our chief surveillance. Ding Tao's eyes abruptly lit up. He bookmarked a page. Chief Surveillance Bureau. That's right, the Chief Surveillance Bureau. Young master, Ding Tao looked towards Shen Zequan as though he was seeking praise. The assassination case in Chu capital. The Jinyi Wei and Chief Surveillance Bureau wanted to investigate master at that time. There was someone surnamed Fu. That's him. Fu Lin Yet. Of course Shen Zequan remembered the assassination case. He had sensed something amiss with the silk from Quan City while he was investigating that case. At that time, the person who had shirked responsibility for searching the Prince of Libei's residence and passed it on to him was the right censor-in-chief, Fu Lin Yet. Yu Xiaozhe suddenly slapped his thigh and even stood up. he was so miffed with himself he just had to laugh at the ludicrousness of it. Chortling himself silly with Ding Tao, he said, I remembered it now, too. Your lordship, before the assassination case, everyone thought that Fu Linye was an official of humble origins. It was precisely because of Fu Linye that second master suffered so much back then. So that son of a bitch had long been colluding with Wei Huigu. The tussle between the noble clans and those of humble origins happened after the 4th year of the Xian era. Back then, Hua Saiqian led the Grand Secretariat, and he also had the help of the Empress Dowager and Pan Rugui. Hai Lianji thus had no choice but to rely on the Chief Surveillance Bureau's evaluations of the various officials for promotion and delegation to hinder the minions of the Hua clan and Pan faction from running amok in the local region's government offices. Fu Linye, who was at that time pretending to be a gentleman of worth, had considerable influence over Hai Lianji and the other officials of humble origins in consideration of those on the Ministry of Personnel's reference list. If Fu Linye was the one who assigned Peng Fangmiao to Deng province, Shen Zequan paused for a moment, then Wei Huigu and even Shi Hongxian could be this he. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 203, Sanjiao. Huo Lingyun obviously did not know who exactly he was, or he would have been able to voice out the name the moment he opened his mouth. However, regardless of whether it was Wei Huigu or Shi Hongxian, they were all already dead. During the 6th year of the Xian era, only the Hua clan and the Pan faction had the capability to make promises of noble titles to Huo Cheng. Yao Wenyu stroked the back of the cat's neck with 2 fingers. At that time, Shi Hongxian had yet to join the imperial court, and Wei Huigu was far from having the ability to do so. Why did your lordship put your guess on these 2 people? Noble title. Xiao Qi stressed the 2 words. Trace this promise up the hierarchy, and you don't even need to guess to be able to list out the few who could do so. It's as good as not covering it up. Based on the speculation of Peng Fangmiao's official career afterward, the promise of a noble title is very likely a sort of disguise. The real bribe used was something else. Talking about the scorpions had made half of Kong Ling's body break out in a cold sweat. Although Qianjin was the Minister of Revenue before the 8th year of the Xian era, it was still Wei Huigu who held genuine control over the Ministry of Revenue starting from the 1st year of the Xian era. Qianjin was dismissed from office along with Hua Saiqian during the rebellion at the Nanlin hunting grounds. However, the key to Great Zhou's money still did not fall into Hai Lianji's hands. Wei Huigu stepped forward immediately right after and took over the office of the Minister of Revenue, where he continued to go around in circles with Hai Lianji. It was not until Wei Huigu was imprisoned during the Libei's military provisions case that the noble clan's embezzlement of the state treasury during the reign of Xian, which resulted in a deficit that eventually led to the Zongbo troops' defeat, finally came to light. This was an intricate, complicated web that involved not only the officials from Chu capital but even the officials of the various local governments of Great Zhou. Thinking about it, if he had used the same method to plant covered pawns and wiki pieces in Juexi and Qidong, then how many of them now were scorpions? It makes one's blood run cold, Kong Ling could not refrain from blurting out. This is simply destroying Great Zhou from within. Panic not. Shen Zequan looked around at the various gentlemen. The calm tone he used flicked away the anxiety that was beginning to permeate the air. It's all too easy to give themselves away when there are too many threads of clues. Even the most astute scheme is bound by the limitations of the mortal body. Manipulating such a game is time-consuming and labor-intensive, and having too many people involved will only prove to be counterproductive. After all, too many cooks spoil the broth. Juexi and Qidong were both not the same as Zongbo. Zongbo was the result of a lax administration, while Juexi had Zhang Qingshan who, during his investigation of the deficit with Xue Zaiozhuo, did everything in his power to thwart the noble clans and the scorpions. Meanwhile, Qidong had Qi Zuyan, the commander-in-chief who was in charge of all the territories in Qidong. She had her own core team under her command, as well as Qi Xiu to assist her in governmental affairs. She would never collude with the scorpions. But Shen Zequan was certain at this moment that the person who had tampered with the Bianjun commandery's grains was a white scorpion hiding in Chu capital, and this scorpion had not been trying to force Lu Guangbai into rebelling but to drive him to his death. Xiao Qi, however, once again fixed his eyes on Huo Lingyun. Since the scorpions were the ones who gave the blunderbuss to King Yi, then who's the one who taught you to use it? Firearms were not broadswords and swords. As a native of Deng province, Huo Lingyun would not have had the chance to come into contact with the blunderbuss before this, so he would have had to undergo training if he wished to use them with proficiency. Xiao Qi had sniped and handled them before in Chu capital, and thus, he knew them like the back of his hand. Leaving aside the question of whether King Yi himself knew how to use it, if he had known that Huo Lingyun knew how to use blunderbuss, he would not have kept Huo Lingyun by his side without so much as a precaution against the latter. Huo Lingyun pursed his lips, his expression solemn in the silence. After a moment, he answered, "It's Old Fang the 10th. This was one of the reasons why Old Fang the 10th had been willing to join hands with Huo Lingyun to remove King Yi from the equation. He was a fast learner when it came to using firearms, and he was able to move around by King Yi's side. What's more, he could extort him for information on the money vault, as well as keep an eye on King Yi's movements." After Dun province was reclaimed, Yang Qiu and Old Fang the 10th started feeling uneasy. Huo Lingyun continued. By the time Xe province reached an agreement with Libei and Qidong, Fan province and Deng province were already facing the situation of having armed forces being sent to quell them. They were afraid that King Yi could not hold up under threat and ending up opening the gates to surrender, so they thought of making the first move to do away with him and empty out his money vault. Huo Lingyun used the money vault as bait and burned Yang Qiu and Old Fang the 10th to death. This sum of money was now in his hands, and he was the only one who knew where it was. This was also what gave him the confidence to dare to negotiate with Shen Zequan and Xiao Qi. Huo Lingyun's gaze alternated between Shen Zequan and Xiao Qi. "I can use the blunderbuss, and I can teach the Libei armored cavalry and the Xe province garrison troops." He looked at Xiao Qi. "You want to attack Duan province in the second month. You can swap me over to the vanguard squad. I can lead the remaining garrison troops of Deng province." Kneeling at the side for a long time, Fei Sheng's countenance promptly changed. It was only after he composed himself for a moment that he said, "It's not my place to interrupt before Master, but this matter concerns the safety of both Duan province and Second Master, so I'm left with no choice but to say a few words. This man is suspicious and it's inappropriate to put him by Second Master and Master's sides. Second Master has no lack of generals either. Besides, there's also Elder Yin following along this time." Fei Sheng was really exercising due diligence now. His misgivings towards Huo Lingyun were not without reason. Yin Chang was clearly the one who conquered Fan province. If not for this Huo Lingyun's underhanded tricks, Yin Chang would not have gotten a dressing down. Things were just a mess now. Yin Chang took down Fan province, but it was Huo Lingyun who ended up getting the lion's share of the credit, making it look like it was only because of Huo Lingyun's act of arson that they managed to take down Fan province. And that was not all. Fei Sheng found Huo Lingyun to be a man who could endure and dared to be ruthless. When he made his move, he struck with efficiency and decisiveness. His vindictiveness was almost on par with Shen Zequan. Such a man had both capability and a mind of his own. To let Huo Lingyun remain by Shen Zequan's side was to threaten Fei Sheng, and Fei Sheng had no desire to give Huo Lingyun the opportunity to stand out and steal the show. Fei Sheng was very clear on how things worked, and he also knew where his own opportunities lay. He dared to speak up to interrupt now because he could tell for sure that Xiao Qi did not like Huo Lingyun. Sure enough, Xiao Qi did not want to answer Huo Lingyun at all. He needed the blunderbuss, but he did not need Huo Lingyun. Duan province could only be Xiao Xian's own playground. He had stopped over in Tse province for such a long time, spending every single day at the Biwen military drill grounds and donning heavy armor to train with Haragos scorpions, all just to find a breakthrough that could change the current situation in Libei and turn the tide in its favor. If he were to change the vanguard to Huo Lingyun, then it would undoubtedly be a heavy punch to the guts of the Libei armored cavalry, whose morale was already low to begin with. Shen Zequin's waist and back started aching after sitting for a long time. The swollen teeth marks on the inside of his thighs had yet to subside. What he had told Xiao Qiye in the morning about his mind being in a whirl was not a lie. And now, his mind was in a fog all over, no thanks to the white scorpions. They still had to start sending provisions to Dun province in the afternoon, and the rations needed for the battle in Duan province had to go first. Then, there was also the thorny issue of whether Huo Lingyun could be put to use, or not. Since young Master Huo has his mind set on it, Yao Wenyu said to Shen Zequin. Your lordship, the Jin Yi have been recruiting new recruits recently, haven't they? That's right. Shen Zequin understood Yao Wenyu's intent right away. Put Huo Lingyun in the Jin Yi, and Huo Lingyun would not be able to act as he pleased given Fei Sheng's misgivings of him, and with Jiao Tianya at the side watching over them, Fei Sheng could not go too far trampling over Huo Lingyun either. Not only could they put him at a distance away from Shen Zequin by doing this, but they could also put him to use instead of letting him go to waste. Moreover, leaving both Jiao Tianya and Huo Lingyun as double restraints to hold Fei Sheng in check could also serve as a warning to Fei Sheng, who was gradually becoming more and more standoffish, reminding him not to let success go to his head. Fei Sheng, Shen Zequin said, pick from the remaining Deng province garrison troops. We'll take everyone who meets your recruitment standards, including this young Master Huo. Fei Sheng only had to think about it to understand the intent of this order. His heart sank, but he had to put on a show of accepting it gladly. I shall respectfully follow Master's arrangements. But these Deng province garrison troops are all Huo Lingyun's old acquaintances. They may not necessarily be willing to serve in the Jin Yi. That will be because you are not rewarding them enough. Xiao Qiye raised his left hand and turned the ring on his right thumb back to its original position. There was no smile in his eyes. Once they join the Jin Yi, they are no longer natives of Deng province. Their names in the previous military register of Deng province can be struck off. Xiao Qiye said just enough to make his point. The imperial army the second master took in during his early years was even harder to deal with than the Deng province garrison troops, and his way of managing his subordinates had been none other than to be fair in meting out rewards and punishments. Xiao Qiye was reminding Fei Sheng that these remaining soldiers of Deng Zhou could break away from their registered place of origin once they joined the Jin Yi and could even be exempted from field taxes in Tse province. As long as he could do a good job carrying out the task Shen Zequin had instructed him, what could he not achieve? Fei Sheng understood what he meant and hurriedly acknowledged his orders. It was already late by the time the meeting was over. Jiao Tianya pushed Yao Wenyu back to their courtyard. The slab stone paths in the courtyard had all been cleared, with not even a speck of snow on it. They had gone out of the way to sprinkle salt too, for fear that the wheelchair might skid while going up. The newly planted plum blossoms had all withered, the fallen red dead in the embrace of its branches, encased in ice and snow. They presented a scene that appeared particularly bleak and desolate. The road today was damp, so Jiao Tianya walked slowly, keeping the wheelchair stable and steady as he pushed it along. Yao Wenyu's cat was called Hanu. If it were not stretching itself and licking its paws under the eaves, it would be nestling on Yao Wenyu's knees, sleeping soundly with its belly exposed. At present, it was a little bundle of energy as it kneaded its paws on Yao Wenyu's sleeves and nuzzled itself hard against Yao Wenyu's palm. Yao Wenyu lowered his fingers to scratch Hanu. The lanterns at the sides shone upon the sides of his face. He had gotten a little fleshy lately, and he looked a lot better as compared to the time when he had first arrived. This was the Yao Yuanzhou of distinguished demeanor and ethereal appearance. Qiao Tianya did not speak. His gaze shifted to Yao Wenyu's collar before he averted it to the cuff of Yao Wenyu's sleeves. They had not exchanged a single word today. The wheelchair entered through the door, and the attendant under the eaves headed in to deliver hot water. Yao Wenyu sat in the inner chamber and read his books, while Qiao Tianya took off his blade and stood outside to look at his own 7-stringed guqin. A long time elapsed, and the servants all withdrew from the room and closed the door gently. Usually, Qiao Tianya was the one who personally bathed Yao Wenyu without any help from the others. Yuan Zhou liked to be clean, and he would not sleep if he did not bathe. Every time Qiao Tianya wiped his hair, he would sit quietly. He seemed to have accepted the sorry figure he was currently cutting, but only to the extent that no one else other than Qiao Tianya was permitted to look. This was the limit of what he could bear. Qiao Tianya stood for close to an hour before he finally heard Yao Wenyu call out in a low voice from inside. Qiao Sanjiu. Qiao Tianya's fingers that had been strumming faintly across the guqin strings came to a halt, but he did not respond, as though he had not heard him. After a moment of silence, Yao Wenyu continued. Time for bed. The wind chimes beneath the eaves stirred, drawing in the loneliness in the wind as well. Yao Wenyu saw through the hanging drapes the shadow that Qiao Tianya cast upon it. He seemed to have stood there for quite a long time. Upon hearing Yao Wenyu, he paused for a moment before lifting the drapes to enter. The candlelight was very dim. The Yao Wenyu of this hour did not yearn for light, for this was the beginning of his frailty and helplessness every day. Hanu burrowed into the bedding and swatted playfully at the corner of the blanket, completely unaware of the awkwardness in the room. Yao Wenyu had yet to school the expression in his eyes when Qiao Tianya bent forward with calm and composure to carry him up from the wheelchair. Their clothes touched, and Qiao Tianya placed Yao Wenyu's arm on the back of his shoulder. At the same time Yao Wenyu made contact with Qiao Tianya's back, his fingers curled slightly. Yuan Zhou was a very reserved man. That was the effect of his upbringing as a gentleman of virtue. Qiao Tianya untied Yao Wenyu's hair. It was at this moment that the expression in his eyes was focused, so focused that Yao Wenyu could not bring himself to meet them. All he could do was to lower his own eyes to avoid Qiao Tianya's gaze. When he had been stripped down to his inner garment, Yao Wenyu muttered softly, "Don't." Qiao Tianya paused for a moment without letting go of the belt he had been pulling at. Yao Wenyu suddenly clenched his collar with an expression similar to indignation. He repeated, "Don't." "Don't what?" Qiao Tianya, who had been silent this whole time, looked at him, his face a picture of calm. The words "don't touch me" got caught in Yao Wenyu's throat. He stared at Qiao Tianya with bloodshot eyes, as though Qiao Tianya was some great scourge. His palms trembled slightly, yet the word that came out of his mouth was still, "Don't." Yao Wenyu pursed his lips tightly and started to struggle. He pushed against Qiao Tianya's chest, rejecting the latter's touch. The rattan chair creaked. Flashes of green and white shook in the blurred mirror as wide-sleeved robes and black hair struggled in the crooks of Qiao Tianya's arms, like spring leaves that were all too anxious to make their escape with the wind. Qiao Tianya let him make a scene as he pleased. Just when Yao Wenyu was about to slide onto the ground, Qiao Tianya suddenly overturned the rattan chair, grabbed Yao Wenyu's wrists, and pinned him down forcefully onto the woolen carpet. "What do you want?" Qiao Tianya held down Yao Wenyu's wrists with one hand and gripped Yao Wenyu's face with the other hand to correct its direction. "Do you want me to throw you in like this, or throw you here?" Yao Wenyu was forced to tilt his head up. His breaths quickened as he shut his eyes, biting down on his lip until it went pale. Qiao Tianya released the hand that was grasping his chin and pressed them between his lips to prevent him from biting down on them. He wedged his fingers in, only for Yao Wenyu to clamp down on them as if he was venting his anger. "What are you afraid of?" Qiao Tianya let him bite, his expression slightly cold. "That wasn't your fault. The intoxicated Yuan Zhou of last night was very different." He briskly forgot the pain of his legs and had a reaction to being touched in the bathtub. A noble young master was still human, what he had lost were his legs, not everything else that made him a man. He was still so young, and he still had all the same unspoken desires that he kept secret. But he did not even have the opportunity to pleasure himself, and yet he was laid bare and exposed in Qiao Tianya's eyes every single night. Even so, he never accepted his powerless self. "What's wrong?" Qiao Tianya asked in a harsh voice. "Feeling aggrieved because I'm not a woman? My hand job can't be that bad, right?" "Stop it," Yao Wenyu's face betrayed his agony. All he could do was to yell dispiritedly as he lay here, "Don't say another word." The rattan chair that had rolled to one side knocked into a small clothes rack, which tilted over and smashed into Qiao Tianya's back. Qiao Tianya did not even blink. Under the flickering candlelight, Qiao Tianya did not know which part of him was in a rage either. "How do you see yourself?" Qiao Tianya asked. "Do you think of yourself as a banished immortal? Is it wrong to have desires?" "You." "I don't." Yao Wenyu's eyes had gone thoroughly red. His voice trembled as he struggled to say, "I don't have that sort of. I don't need them." He could not sink to such lows and have his very last shred of dignity destroyed. What would he be left with then? He only had this bit of dignity left, and it was this bit of dignity that sustained him so that he could sit before the others in this weak and frail state and accept all their pity. As Yao Wenyu trembled, tears trickled out of his eyes. They did so against his will, but his tears were beyond his control, just like his crippled legs. He was ashamed to face this side of himself, just as he did not dare to face whatever remained of his desires. Qiao Tianya's chest heaved. He abruptly flipped Yao Wenyu over. With a sense of foreboding, Yao Wenyu's eyes widened in panic as Qiao Tianya pulled him into his arms from behind and undid his inner garment. Yao Wenyu struggled violently, pushing against Qiao Tianya's arms as he resisted. "I don't want to." "Qiao Sanjiao, release me, let." Qiao Tianya groped for Yao Wenyu's hand, pulled it into his palm, and let it down to hold Yao Wenyu's object of shame with his hand over the latter's. It was in this way he embraced Yao Wenyu and heard Yao Wenyu crying when he was neck to neck with him. The dim candlelight went out as they clung close to one another in this space. Yao Wenyu's face was to the woolen carpet, his cheeks wet with tears from the unbearable shame and indignation. A suppressed cry escaped his throat, a cry for the dignity he lost in Qiao Tianya's hands, and for the self he had gotten a clear look of. He panted for breath in between his sobs, his free hand clutching tightly at Qiao Tianya's sleeve as the pleasure of being defiled and broken into pieces in Qiao Tianya's masterfully sliding palm washed over him. "Kill me," a choke escaped from Yao Wenyu as he rasped, "Qiao Sanjiao. I hate you to the core." All the while that Qiao Tianya's palm was gliding up and down in that darkness, he was pressed up against the side of Yuan Zuo's face, listening to Yao Wenyu's sobs and ramblings, as well as Yao Wenyu's pants and rasps. "You're not in the wrong." As Yao Wenyu shuddered, Qiao Tianya whispered into Yao Wenyu's ear, his voice raspy as he said in all seriousness, "You can hate me all you want." End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 204, Empress Dowager. Xiao Qiye deployed troops to Duan province in the second month, and Shenzhequan had the grain wagon set off first. Tan Taihu, who was in Dun province, was all prepared and ready. To the north, Xiao Jiming dispatched Wu Ziu to lead 5,000 Libei armored cavalrymen to stand by at the northern side of Mount Luo. Once there was a change in situation, they would be able to combine forces with Shazhen camp to jointly attack Duan province. Fine snow danced at the spurring of the breeze on this day. The outskirts of the city stretched on into the distance, where a panoramic view of the empty, boundless horizon provided a treat for the eyes. Xiao Qiye was clad from head to toe in his heavy armor, which sank into the thin snow. He looked just like a block of wall standing before Shenzhequan. There are still bandits remaining on Mount Luo. Shenzhequan, wrapped securely in his coat, gazed at him. You have to be careful when passing through the territory. Meng landed on Xiao Qiye's shoulder. I'll remember it. This has to be a quick battle. I'll be back in the 3rd month at the very latest. If the soldiers you send to Deng province aren't enough, let the commander-in-chief know. She can transfer soldiers from Tianfei watchtower. No problem there. Snow brushed past the hair on Shen Zequin's temples and landed on his collar. Xiao Qiye raised his hand to set his palm down on the top of Shen Zequin's head. A quote inexplicably came to his mind. For my wife is still in the springtime of life, and tender are the words to comfort my beloved you. Lan Zhou was only 22 of age this year, and he would be by his side for decades to come. Xiao Qiye, however, would be fighting battles on all fronts in the days to come, regardless of life or death. Overthinking and dwelling too much on it would only serve to make him timid. Shen Zequin was the reason Xiao Qiye became tough. He was also the reason that Xiao Qiye mellowed. Xiao Qiye wanted to protect this man until the very end of his life, and as such, he was willing to give his very best in every single battle. But even the strong like Xiao Fangxiu would also come to an unpredictable end. Xiao Qiye thought plenty after that incident. He loved this man, but he also worried for this man. Perhaps other people in this world did not need the Xiao Cian that much, but Shen Zequin did. I'll wait for you here. Shen Zequin raised his palm to caress Xiao Qiye's cheek. In a soft voice, he said, don't fool around with others on the way. Not even a glance. All of a sudden, Xiao Qiye hugged Shen Zequin. In this snow, as he huffed breaths of hot air, he felt as if he owed Lan Zhou far too much. Lan Zhou could not clearly even leave him in his sleep. Ensconce yourself in the throne at the Hall of Distinction, Xiao Qiye nuzzled against Shen Zequin's temple and whispered, and let not the snowstorm come unto you. Without waiting for Shen Zequin to answer, Xiao Qiye released him. He put on his helmet, flipped atop Lang Tao Shuijin, and turned his horse around to lead the Libe armored cavalry into a gallop to the east. Seeing that Shen Zequin did not move, Fei Sheng held up the umbrella to shield the prefectural lord from the falling snow. Shen Zequin stood in the snow, clutching his blue handkerchief until it became silent all around. Chu capital experienced consecutive days of clear skies, and one could occasionally catch a glimpse of the birds flying in diagonal formations between the double-eave roofs of the imperial palace. The heir apparent was a fast learner. Although she still did not possess the authority to make decisions, she was allowed to listen in on the discussions on state affairs in Mingli Hall. She rarely spoke up, yet in that pair of eyes of hers, Sen Yu saw her dedication to government affairs. Other than reading and practicing calligraphy in the past 6 months, Li Jianting had no other hobbies. She rose early each day and did not even slack off on the days when she fell ill. The Chief Surveillance Bureau, which used to lecture Li Jianheng in the past, gradually could no longer find any shortcomings in Li Jianting that they could admonish her for. In the eyes of these fastidious censors, this heir apparent was one who was the most like a proper crown prince since the crown prince of the reign of Yanji. Even Kong Qiu, who was initially quite critical of her, no longer took to talking about her lightly. No one knew how Shuizaiozhuo had done it, but he had completely destroyed Lingting, and now, only Li Jianting existed in this world. The Empress Dowager had been plagued by headaches lately. Initially, incense had been lit in the hall, but she had Madame Liu Xiang snuff it out as the scent made her feel unwell. The amount of grey hair along her temples had increased as old age was eroding this person of power who had a hand in the storms and turmoil of Chu capital for as long as 30 years. In the face of Li Jianting's youthful appearance, she felt all the more willing in spirit but lacking in strength. Yesterday, Han Cheng presented a memorial to the throne. He's still requesting for troops to be deployed to Tse province. The Marquis of Helion sat below and groused to the Empress Dowager. Conflicts are now abound between people on our own side. Why is he still thinking about Zongbo? The Empress Dowager let Madame Liu Xiang massage her shoulders as she leaned back on the couch. She looked over at Han Cheng's memorial, then said, Shenzhequan has taken down Fan province, and now he even intends to use military forces in Duan province. After spring, he will become the tiger of Zongbo. He harbors a deep-seated hatred towards Han Cheng for the murder of his teacher. It is only natural for Han Cheng to be scared. The Marquis of Helian did not want to bother with Han Cheng's personal feud at all. What he was currently worried about was of another nature. After the 9th month last year, the proactive faction led by Xue Zaiozhuo collaborated with the Chief Surveillance Bureau to investigate the crop fields of the 8 cities in preparation for the resurveying of the farming fields. This had always been the case for the past years, but those had been merely done for show. The officials going on inspection tours simply went through the motions and visited the 8 cities as a mere formality to get things over and done with, then submitted a figure that everyone had agreed on beforehand to the Grand Secretariat to muddle their way through the process. However, it seemed that Xue Zaiozhuo was serious about it this time. I told all of you in the past to tell the rural manners you have in your names to restrain themselves. But did anyone listen? How many people froze to death in winter last year? Other than the 3 cities of Di City, Jin City, and Quan City that provide disaster relief to save the people, everyone else would rather be cowering cowards. The Empress Dowager tossed the memorial onto the small table. The eastern pearls by her ears swayed along with her voice. Why did Pan Lin have to antagonize Xue Zaiozhuo? Now Xue Zaiozhuo is going to work with Sen Yu and the rest to investigate the accounts. Was this not an opportunity Pan Lin himself served up to him? The Marquis of Helian married Commandery Princess Zhao Yu to Pan Lin's younger brother, so their Fei clan and Pan clan were now both in the same boat and would sink or swim together. He had initially thought the marriage would be an insurance against future troubles, given that 3 members of the Pan clan, Pan Xiongja, Pan Lin, and Pan Yi, were all significant officials of the imperial court. However, who would have expected this Pan Lin to be such a pain in the ass? The Marquis of Helian did not dare to take the blame for Pan Lin, but he could not let Pan Lin continue with his ways, either. Pan Lin was currently stuck in the opening that was the Minister of Revenue. The job he did was significant and crucial, yet he did not formally receive a promotion. Everyone was wrought with anxiety, fearing that Pan Lin would keep on getting defeated in this tussle between both sides and ended up handing the Ministry of Revenue on a silver platter to the officials from humble origins. Chenzi is impatient by nature. I have no idea how he offended Xue Zaiozhuo. The Marquis was restlessly burning with so much anxiety that he was like an ant on a hot pan as he pleaded. But Pan Xiongja and Pan Yi are both loyal to your Majesty. You have also watched our Zaya grow up into a lady. She and the 3rd young miss are the gall of you. The Empress Dowager cut him off and even righted herself to berate him. How dare you push political disputes of the court onto my little baby? Back then, when I wanted Zayu to marry a lad of the Han clan, you refused and insisted on coveting that bit of petty advantage that the Pan clan could offer you. Now that things have gone south, you have to shoulder the responsibility for it yourself. The Empress Dowager rarely flew into a rage like this. The palace maids and eunuchs both inside and outside the hall hurriedly fell to their knees and bent low over the ground, holding their breaths. How would the Marquis still dare to sit? He fell to his knees in a fluster, shuffled forward on his knees, and slapped himself several times as he pleaded, Your Majesty, please be appeased. The 3rd young miss has already been married away to Qidong, the Empress Dowager declared solemnly. She is the First Lady of Qi Shiu. With a proper rank now, every word she says and every action she makes comes under close scrutiny. The encroachment of the commoners' fields by the rural manners under you people has nothing to do with her, so don't bring this up again. You're already at such an advanced age. Do you still need me to teach you how to watch your words? You're right, the Marquis of Helian was not a man with guts to begin with. The only legitimate descendants of the Fei clan in this generation were the young master Fei Shi and the commandery Princess Zayu. Fei Shi spent his days fooling around, and even now, he still did not hold a proper official position. Because of this, the Marquis of Helion hesitated over the Commandery Princess Zayu's marriage for a long time over every little thing. Who would have known that trouble would still come knocking on his door? The Empress Dowager rose to her feet. With Madame Liu Xiang supporting her, she made her way over to the Marquis of Helion's side. The Marquis was up in years, and for what it was worth, he was still a noble. It was a disgrace for him to keep kneeling like this. The Empress Dowager calmed down a little and said, "Get up. This is so unbecoming for someone of your stature." The Marquis of Helion scrambled to his feet and stood helplessly by the Empress Dowager's side, not daring to stand too close. The Empress Dowager raised her head back slightly to look along the palace eaves at the bright and clear sky. After thinking for a moment, she said, "Fei Shi has also come of age. If his inclinations do not lie in scholarly studies, then he can join the military. There are so many vacancies in the 8 great training divisions, let him learn from them. He doesn't need to carve out a distinguished career, as long as he can temper himself and settle down. Once he has put in the hours and has the record of service to prove it, he will naturally be promoted to the Ministry of War." The Empress Dowager had pointed out the Marquis' sore spot. He only had this one son, Fei Shi, and he had kept him sheltered back at home ever since the latter was young. After Fei Shi entered society, he was adept at all things related to the drinking of wine and the soliciting of courtesans, but not of proper education. Moreover, he was an obstinate one who was close friends with Pan Lin. To date, he was not even willing to show Xue Zaiozhuo due respect. He spent his days wallowing in vices on Donglong Street, typically listening only to what the courtesans had to say. The Marquis of Helion's eyes momentarily grew moist. He lifted his sleeve to wipe his tears. "Your Majesty is the compassionate mother of all in the world, your graciousness knows no bounds." This humble subject originally wanted him to join the 8 great training divisions as well, but with that temperament of his, alas. The Empress Dowager was fed up with the Marquis of Helion. She knew what he meant. The 8 great training divisions were no longer a glamorous, lucrative post that managed Chu capital's patrols. Given its proximity to Zongbo, they might even be deployed to fight wars in the future. The Marquis of Helion was reluctant to send his son in to give his life for the cause for fear that Fei Shi might meet with a mishap on the battlefield, so he was hoping that the Empress Dowager could get Fei Shi into the 6 ministries instead. But Chu capital was now no longer in control of the noble clans. Domestic strife and foreign invasion were imminent. Shenzhequan was not eliminated from the equation, and in just a short 6 months, he had become the overlord of Zongbo, working in collusion with Libe. If not for the pressing threat of the Bianchi cavalry, he would have already fought his way to Chu capital by now. Qizuyan, on her end, had also written a letter to Chu capital saying that she was going to use military force against the Qingsha tribe in the 4th month. Meanwhile, Xue Zaiozhuo was pressing in on them every step of the way. Although he professed it to be a private feud with Pan Lin, his impeachment memorials were all legitimate. The 8 cities did indeed encroach on the common people's fields, and it would be a tough battle once investigations started after spring. The situation was already at such a stage, and the Marquis of Helion and a few others were still only thinking of themselves and those small tracts of fields in their rural manors which they feared would be confiscated. The Empress Dowager recalled the times during the reign of Xiand. From Huasaiqian to Wei Huigu, which of them was not a capable minister or general? And now, the Marquis of Helion was a bungling oaf who was a good-for-nothing, Pan Xiongja was a fence-sitter who swayed where the wind blows, and Han Cheng was a rapacious one with wild ambitions. Dealing with the Grand Secretariat exhausted the Empress Dowager, both physically and mentally. Xue Zaiozhuo's investigation of the 8 cities' fields is meant to pave the way for the heir apparent to ascend to the throne. The expression in the Empress Dowager's eyes was deep. It's still not time for the heir apparent to step into the forefront. Go back and make it clear to Pan Xiongja that he should open up the granaries in Dan City and Chuan City to distribute the grains as aid relief while the snow has yet to melt. Clean up the accounts in his hands as well, and return all those unnecessary fields to the people. Shuiziaozuo does not have the power to abuse as yet. If he wants to investigate, then let him investigate. Alarmed, the Marquis of Helion exclaimed, if those accounts were to fall into this hands, it'd be hard to exculpate ourselves. The Empress Dowager looked at the Marquis of Helion and said, Pan Lin has served in the Ministry of Revenue for so long, and the appraisals of him have been good. He also has capable men working under him. Shuiziaozuo wants to assist the Chief Surveillance Bureau, but even so, he can't sidestep the Ministry of Revenue. The previous year's field records are all in the Ministry of Revenue, which also manages the auditing of the account books. Pan Lin can avoid arousing suspicions, just get him to appoint someone he can trust over. Get through this, and Shuiziaozuo won't have any way to force the issue. The Marquis of Helion pondered it over for a brief period. Pan Lin has a man named Liang Qiushan under him. He was originally promoted by the Emperor Tianchen during the public ditch incident, and he has also been guided by Pan Lin before. This person's appraisal last year was outstanding, and he also has a good reputation with the officials of humble origins. His home is in Chu capital, and he doesn't have much of a history, which makes it most convenient for us to hold him in our grasp. As long as the Pan clan can survive this, the Empress Dowager said, they will be able to come out of it for the better. Since there were problems with the fields in the 8 cities, then just how clean could the Shui clan's Quan city be? Shuiziaozuo's audacity in touching the 8 cities' fields account was tantamount to laying a hand on a slice of the noble clan's pie. This matter concerned the future interests of the noble clans, and no doubt heads would have to roll if the field taxes were to be investigated. The Empress Dowager wanted Pan Lin to use Liang Qiushan to choke off the opening in Dan City. As long as the investigation could not move forward and the bookkeeping was messed up, they could make things difficult for Shuiziaozuo in the imperial court and turn the tables around to investigate his Shui clan's Quan city first. Under the sunset glow of the setting sun, the Empress Dowager took off the prayer beads on her wrists and tossed them on the couch. Incense smoke from the prayer hall behind her rose in spirals, accentuating the Empress Dowager's dignified and poised appearance that almost belied her old age had it not been for her gray hair. End chapter.